After interviewing for a military position, Michael learned that his record was not as clean as he thought. Events in his life were keeping him from getting the job he needed to support his family. Through an expungement, he was able to gain meaningful employment and further his career goals. Here's Michael's story.
The basics of an expungement are, it is the court's process to fully erase and strip any record or any trace of an arrest or prosecution off of your background check. And it goes not only to take everything off of your background check, but it strips everything from public record on the Oklahoma Supreme Court network and on ODCR, which is another publicly available court record as well.
The reason I sought Clint's help for an expungement is as a member of the military, either on the reserve side or active duty side, I have to attain a top secret clearance, which is pretty thorough as far as the background checks go. And even on the civilian side, I had applied to several police departments, which also do pretty extensive background checks. And one of the things that came up was I had a couple of old tickets from college that I had honestly ignored for the past few years. But those had to get scrubbed off my record in order to meet a certain requirement for both of those background checks.
At the end of an expungement, the big goal, what we try to do for everybody, is to give our clients the ability to say, this never happened. Yes, you might have gotten a DUI in 2003 and 2004, but if you're eligible for an expungement and you go through that process with us, you legally have the ability to say in the future to an employer, to an apartment complex, or for any other purposes for employment, you've got the ability to say, this didn't happen.
The process of getting an expungement from the client side is pretty easy. I imagine from the legal side, it's a lot more complex, which is why Clint is so good about knowing and how to navigate that system. More or less, I just told him what it was that I needed help with, and from there, he really took the ball, and he was really good about keeping me informed along that process as to who needed to be notified and if we might have to go to a court, or if I would have to show up or not.
People come to me for expungements for a lot of different reasons. Most of the time, it's because they're looking to get a better job and an old arrest or an old prosecution is hanging out on their background. A lot of other times, you'll get people that will say, look, I want to leave a clean legacy for my family. Yeah, I had something that I'm ashamed of. Yeah, I did something in my background. I want to get that off. I want to get that completely buried, and I don't want my kids or my grandkids to know about it. And another somewhat common reason that you get are people just want to go through and they just want to have a clear conscience.
The expungement process for me was very relieving, because having a couple of tickets on your background that may have an impact to a job is definitely stressful. It is one of those things that I was very happy to have the help and the expert guidance in. And yes, it has definitely made me feel like I have a legitimate shot at attaining the things that I want to attain with my job.
Some of the most common misconceptions that people have about expungements are, oh, this old arrest will roll off of my background check after 7 years or after 10 years. And in some states, I think that that's true. But in Oklahoma, unless you get an expungement, it will not just fall off of your record. Another common misconception, or another thing that people are told, is that if you get a deferred sentence, oh, so long as you do everything that the court asks you to do, so long as you pay your court costs and fines, well, it's expunged and off of your record. It's not necessarily true. Most of the time, it's only partially expunged off of your record. Sometimes there will still be a record of the arrest and your charge at the time of the arrest, as well as the arresting agency and the date of the arrest still on your background check.
Clint helped me expunge another incident that happened, which was I was issued a temporary protective order from a member of the family. Even though it's a system designed to help people with domestic violence and whatnot. In this case, I had never actually come into contact with this person, and it was just really unjustified. And even though the protective order itself was never granted, it's something that shows up in the OSCN network, and so I really wanted to get that off of any kind of record because it really wasn't justified and it wasn't issued. So I needed that help to clear that up as well.
So the process for your average expungement goes like this. It takes around 60 to 90 days, depending on the county, depending on the judge, depending on how backed up the court system is. But generally speaking, it goes like this. You file a petition for expungement and you say, this is my client, these are the reasons that he or she is actually eligible for an expungement. And then you pass that around to all the agencies that were involved, the arresting agency, the DA's office, and then the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigations. If your client's eligible, what we do is we take the signatures from each one of those agencies saying, hey, we've got no problems with your client getting this off of your record. And we take their signatures, attach it to an order, and submit it to the court, hopefully before we have a hearing date scheduled. A lot of the times, our clients will have to just show up in court to just have the judge recognize them and say, hey, we recognize that you're eligible for this expungement. Congratulations, you can now get this off of your record. Other times, if we get everything in early, our clients don't even have to go to court. The judges sign off on it, no big deal. You don't ever have to show up in a courtroom ever again.
One of the major impacts that people don't realize, when anybody can say anything about anybody and get an emergency protective order issued, the impact to that person, right or wrong, is that you do have to immediately submit all your firearms to, out of the house. In addition to, you're not able to go certain places, do certain things. Having a part of your job in the military is to carry a firearm, so I really wasn't sure how that was going to work out for me. It also had an impact on my civilian application with the police department. It immediately came to a halt because I was essentially put on pause because they can't process someone that is in the middle of getting a protective order figured out.
Having a criminal background impacts every facet of your life. I mean, it goes from impacting how much you're going to pay an interest on a home loan. It's going to impact your ability to travel, because some countries, if you have a DUI or a felony conviction, they won't let you across the border. It will impact your ability to act as a guardian. If you need to act as a guardian for someone's children, or for an aging parent, if you need to have that sort of power to take care of someone, it will impact that. For the biggest thing, and the thing that is most common that a criminal background will impact, is someone's job. Some employers simply will not hire you if you have a felony conviction or if you have certain arrests in your background. And that is the number one reason that people come to me to get an expungement. They want to go through and they want to improve their life, they want to advance their career, and they want to actually make their lot in life better, but this old arrest or this old criminal prosecution is what's holding them back.
I would tell anybody out there, don't let somebody else control your life and your career. You take initiative and seek help if you need it.
So the beautiful thing about an expungement is, in our orders, and at the end of the day, after this is successful and after it's gone through, you have the legal ability to say, this never occurred. It is completely wiped off of your past. You get to bury your past completely, and you get to walk away from it and then move forward with your life.
Joining us now to talk about expungement, we have Ed Wunsch, legal aid staff attorney embedded with the Education and Employment Ministry, or TEAM. Robert Wyatt, a criminal defense lawyer whose practice is in Oklahoma City. And Justin Wolf, who is Assistant General Counsel for OSBI. Welcome.
Thank you.
Ed, what are some of the challenges that you see that individuals are facing because of a criminal background?
It's probably a lot more than we can go into in the time that we have here, but jobs are the biggest one. For individuals with a criminal background on a job application, they have to check a box usually that says they face a felony conviction, that they have a felony conviction. And then with that, some employers just will toss the application. I think that it's important for all Oklahomans, regardless of whether you've been involved with the criminal justice system or not, to recognize the fact that we're all better than the worst incident in our lives. It's a quote from Brian Stevenson. And I think that it's really important for Oklahomans to recognize that.
And Bob, these things don't roll off in Oklahoma over time.
They don't. They stay on your record until you take some type of court action. There's certain types of offenses that technically should drop off after a deferred sentence. However, generally speaking, the courts do not automatically withdraw them. You have to take some type of action to clean up your record.
Justin, what do you commonly see as concerns when people want to have an expungement?
Most people want to know that whatever problem that their criminal record is causing will be solved. So people oftentimes call me, they find out they have a criminal record when they're turned down for a promotion at work, or when they're turned down from an apartment complex or a specific job, let's say within the state. And what people want to know is, if I go through this expungement process I just found out about, will I be okay? Will I be able to achieve my goals in my life or my career?
What qualifies someone for an expungement?
The statute has set out 14 categories of people who qualify. We basically break it down in how the criminal case resolved. Generally, it's a matter of successfully going through the criminal justice system in whatever procedure happened to the client, and then some sort of a waiting period after that.
I would just chime in there that if you qualify for an expungement, as was pointed out in the segment, typically we're going to send the proposed order over to Justin and he's just going to sign off on it. But for individuals that don't qualify for an expungement, if you just file, Justin's probably going to file an objection in your case, or the other law enforcement agencies that are involved, and that may then cause you to have not only your conviction on the record, but also your failed attempted expungement.
That's exactly right, and that is a risk of filing something if you don't have eligibility. Lawyers have to explain that to their clients, that in this given circumstance you're taking a risk that you might not be eligible. Certain assaults would not qualify because they're violent offenses, and no one qualifies for violent offenses, but in other cases an assault and battery could in fact be expungible. So you have to have a lawyer who has knowledge about it, and you have to explain the risk to your client.
Yeah, I think the good news is that other than violent offenses, the OSBI signs off on well over 95% of the expungement petitions that we receive. As long as people qualify, our goal is to assist the public in cleaning up the arrest records so that they can achieve their goals.
What is something that can be expunged that people might not be aware of? Are there any surprises where people might think that, well, I couldn't do anything about this, but you could actually help them?
Well, a couple of things that I can think of. One that was mentioned by Clint on the tape was protective orders. In certain cases, a protective order can be expunged, either because of a waiting period or because someone sought a protective order and it was denied or rejected by the court. Still have a waiting period, but there's a way to get that done. In other cases, there are occasionally sex offenses where you can still qualify for an expungement, but they are very rare and very unusual circumstances.
I would also add that we're so used in Oklahoma, we can look at OSCN and see a lot of court records there.
OSCN being?
The Oklahoma Supreme Court Network,
Yes.
OSCN.net on the web.
Yes.
And so there you can see a lot of things, but there are other criminal charges that may not show up there. For example, if you were convicted in a municipal court, those records can sometimes be expunged as well, and they could still have an effect on your jobs if they're not expunged because they might show up on a background check.
Yeah, I think one of the common misconceptions is that if charges aren't filed, people think that there's not a record. However, every time any citizen is fingerprinted by a police department or a law enforcement agency in Oklahoma, those records are transferred to the OSBI, and we maintain those until an expungement is granted.
So just for an arrest?
Correct. The OSBI has a database that's basically just a list of all the arrests that occur, no matter if there's a prosecution or not.
What about someone that isn't eligible for an expungement right now? Can that be cured?
It may not be able to be cured, but regardless, my recommendation to anyone that's not eligible right now is look into applying for a pardon. Some of the pardon requirements are a little bit more restrictive because of the fact that you have to pay off all of your court costs and fines and all of your restitution and things like that. But the pardon process doesn't require any filing fees. You don't need an attorney to file that for you in court. There's just about a 20-page application that you have to complete and send off, and attach to that some court records as well as some other records, and then it gets reviewed by DOC, and then you can appear in front of the Pardon and Parole Board, and they'll give a recommendation to the governor about whether you should receive a pardon.
And the important thing to note is that a pardon is an official forgiveness, and expungement means we forgive and forget. And they're different because one still leaves you with the record that's been forgiven. The other one seals the record from the public view.
Justin Wolf, Ed Wunsch, Bob Wyatt, thanks for joining us on Ask a Lawyer.